This week's parsha, Parshas Vayishlach. Yishlach Yaakov Malochim Lefonov El Esav Ochiv. Yaakov sent angels before him to Esav, his brother, Arza Seis the Edom, to the land of Seir, which is the field of Edom. So here the Ramban says something interesting. Nichtva parsha zos lodia ki hitzla koshvochos avdo v'gol miyad chosk mimenu. This portion is written to teach us that Hashem saved his servant and redeemed somebody who was stronger than he was. Then v'yishlach maloch v'yatzileu. He sent his angel to save him. Lamdenu od. And in addition, what else do I learn from here? Shulo botach b'tzidkoso. He did not rely on his righteousness, meaning that Hashem will perform a miracle on his behalf. V'ishtadil b'hatzolo b'chol yecholto. And therefore he took an initiative to do whatever he can to bring about a situation to save himself. As it says, he did three things. He prayed. He sent a gift, very valuable gift, the herds, the flocks, and he prepared for war. Those were the three things he prepared for. Shu lobotach b'tzidkoso, v'ishtado b'atzolo b'chol yicholto. Now, seemingly have some difficulty here. We find that Yosef, when he was sold into slavery, he was in the pit, and eventually he was accused of trying to defile the wife of his master. He was thrown into a dungeon. He was 10 years in the dungeon. In the 10th year, the wine steward and the baker, who were ministers in the court of Paro, were in prison with him, and he became their valet. And they had a dream. He interprets the dream. And he had said to them, in 3 days, the baker is going to be hanged. And the birds will pick the flesh off his body. And the wine steward, the wine chamberlain, is going to be reinstated. And the minister, who was the wine chamberlain, saw the interpretation was correct. So immediately he asked him, made a request. Remember me and mention me. Mm-hmm. And because he made this request, which were 2 words, rather than being only in prison for 10 years, he stayed an additional 2 years in prison. And only once the 2 years were up, only then was he released. And according to Rabbeinu Bachya, what was the issue? The issue was, it was considered a lack of faith. That some people, at their level, they have to take initiative. Yosef, being such an intimate of God, he shouldn't even take an initiative. He had no reason. So taking initiative was considered a lack of faith. That was a disrespect. I always give the example. A person has a father who he has a very special relationship with, and there's nothing which he would ask of his father he would do for him. And he goes and asks a stranger to do the same thing from a stranger. You could have asked your father, what are you going to a stranger? So this itself is a disrespect. Don't you think your father would have done this for you? Hashem would take you out of prison. Do you have to rely on this heathen, this Egyptian wine steward? Because you relied on him, another 2 years. Each word, you're spending another year in prison. Based on the early commentators, the Rishonim, Chazal, Yaakov was the Mufchash Ba'avos. He was the most special of the patriarchs. He fathered the 12 tribes, the Shiftei Koh, as David refers to them as the tribes of God. His children are going to meet the objective of creation, to stand at Sinai and say Nasa v'nishma. As Rabbeinu Bachya says, that Yaakov in his profile is a representation of God's presence on the terrestrial level. And that's why he was so beloved to Yaakov. So Yaakov, who's more than Yosef, he himself has to take initiative to stand up against Esav. But yet it says over here, this is considered something to be admirable. To teach us, in addition, Shulo Botach B'tzidkoso, he did not rely on his righteousness. V'shtadil b'atzolo b'chol yicholto. And he took initiative regarding to save himself with his full ability. Tefillah, Doron, and Milchama. These three areas. Yosef, there's a claim against him. Why isn't the claim against Yaakov for taking initiative? You find something else. Hashem comes to Yaakov. He overhears a conversation. His wife's brothers, Rachel and Leah's brothers. Yaakov amassed a tremendous amount of wealth in a short period of time. And he hears them saying, all the wealth that Yaakov has accumulated is our father's. Although Yaakov had an agreement with his father, with Lavan, all the wealth of Yaakov is our father's. He stole the wealth from our father. Then he sees his father-in-law, Lavan, and he senses there's something brewing under the surface. Immediately afterwards, Hashem comes to him. Prophecy, you must return immediately. And he leaves. He has to go back. Over here, he's going back. When he left, it says explicitly he left. There was a 3-day distance between himself and his father because his father went to shear his sheep. He left under the cover of night. Lavan finds out, he's infuriated. He chases him with his men, and he wants to kill Yaakov and destroy his family. Arami Ovid Ovi. God appears to him in a dream, says, you shouldn't speak to Yaakov good or bad. Okay? We don't find Yaakov doing any level of preparation for this. He fled. Doesn't he think Lavan's coming after him? It's God's issue. It's not my issue. God will take care of it. There, no initiative, no tefillah, no gift, no milchama. He's totally oblivious to this concern. No reason to be concerned. Hashem says, leave, you go. But yet, when it comes to now, he's confronted with Esav. He's coming with 400 men. What are you worried? As he took care of Lavan, as he communicated with Lavan, don't do anything positive or negative, he'll take care of Esav. But yet, he didn't leave a stone unturned to confront this problem. Lavan was not a problem. Although we say during Kriyas Bikurim, when we bring the new fruits every year on Shavuos, we say Arami Ovid Ovid. We recount the past, our appreciation, our gratitude, what Hashem did on our behalf. Arami Ovid Ovid, he would have destroyed, it wouldn't have been a Klal Yisrael. And yet, when Esav, Hishtadl Hatzol B'chol Yecholto, as I said, he did not leave a stone unturned. Why? Who's the antagonist of Yaakov? Esav. Esav Sonei LeYaakov. And if Yaakov does not meet the grade that he should meet, Esav will destroy him. It's a different level of adversary here. The counterbalance to Yaakov is not Lavan. Lavan is evil. Lavan is Arami. He's the charlatan, underhanded, cunning, deceptive, evil. But that evil has no relevance to Yaakov. The evil which has relevance to Yaakov, which could destroy Yaakov, is Esav. That's Esav son of Yaakov. He's the counterbalance. And if he does not meet the grade that he's sufficiently Akol Kol Yaakov, Chas v'Sholom, Esav has the ability even to kill him and destroy him. That there should not be a Klal Yisrael to that degree. Therefore, he did not leave a stone unturned. He did not rely on his righteousness. Why not? Maybe I'm not righteous enough. You never know. As it says, Shem Yigram Achet, Katotim Kol Achasodim Kol Emes. I've been minimized, diminished, because all the kindness that you've done on my behalf. Maybe I became soiled with sin. So if that's the case, the kol is not that pure voice of Yaakov. And if that's the case, as a result of that, he was mishtadel, b'chol kocho, b'chol yecholto. He had to deal with this issue. Ask for rachmim, tefillas rachmim. The gift is shochad, bribery. As Chazal tell us, if shochad is Ya'ave Einit Tzadikim, if bribery blinds the righteous, you can imagine what it does to those who are corrupt. To what degree? Because this is what they're looking for. And Melchama, if he has to resort to war, he'll fight to the death. Those were the three. Yosef, what he had to deal with what? He had to deal, he was in prison. It wasn't an issue, he's countering anybody there. You're meant to be in prison when Hashem is ready to take you out? Ask him, I'm ready to leave. You're relying on this heathen? At your level, you don't go rely on this kind of person. You have the most intimate being, God himself, who loves you. He's Ben Zekunim. He reflects every aspect of Yaakov. He looks like Yaakov. He's wise like Yaakov. Everything. Chocham. Whatever Yaakov had learned in Shem Ve'ever, he had transmitted to Yosef. What are you asking for? What are you asking this heathen to help you out? But over there wasn't the Egyptian, his situation there was unrelated, that he has to deal with any adversary over there. It was a situation. He was in a situation which was limited him. He was incarcerated. He was suffering. Okay, say to Hashem, help me out. Therefore, as a result of that, it was considered a lack of bitochon, a lack of trust. It was a breach and a disrespect. Therefore, he had to stay another 2 years in the dungeon for each word that he had spoken. That's firstly. Another thing that bothered me, the Ramban had said earlier, it seems to be a little contradictory, when he had the prophecy, the Nevuah on Har Moriah, it says, Hashem Omid Olav. There was a ladder, he'd seen a ladder, angels ascending, descending. Hashem Omid Olav. So Ramban says that what that signifies is that every other tzaddik, whoever they may be, Avram, Yitzchak, although they were the Merkava, they were the location of the Shekhinah, they needed Malochim to protect them. Malochov Yitzavaloch Lishmorcha. As David says in Tehillim, Malochov Yitzavaloch Lishmorcha. Hashem will command the angels, Lishmorcha, to protect you. Yaakov needed no Maloch. Yaakov was at a level unto himself, Hashem Omid Olav. There's no detachment, disassociation between Yaakov and Hashem. Therefore, he does not need a Malach to protect him. Doesn't need a Malach. The Ramban says over here, why is this parsha mentioned? Lodia ki hitzla kodesh baruch hu avdo v'golo miat chosk mimenu. God saved his servant and redeemed him from the one who was stronger than he was. Vayishlach malach v'yatzileu. He sent his angel to save him. What did he send? He needs no angel. Needs no angel. Seems to be contradictory. Here at Har Moriah, Hashem Omid Olav. What do you have to send his angel to save him? The symbolism of the Malochim, the angels, when he had the prophecy in Har Moriah, they were ascending, descending. So the Medrash tells us that each angel was the archangel of every one of the exiles, and he saw the angels ascending so many rungs up the ladder. Golas Bavel, the exile in Bavel were there 70 years, 70 rungs. Modai and Poras, Persia, that, so many rungs. The Greek exile, Yovan, so many rungs. And they came down, ascended, descended. Edom was the last. He sees him ascending. He's not coming down. Yaakov was terrified. That means to say it's like forever. We're never ever going to be extricated from this exile. Hashem says to Yaakov, if he doesn't come down, I will take him down. I will take him down. The only one who could take down Edom is only God. Nobody could take down Edom. That's the Edom, the level of his level of representation of evil. Even the Malach can't take him down. Only Hashem can take him down. But the two things, this taking down Edom, that's only destroying. That's the end of time. Hashem will take him down. Will take him down. But I think over here, he sent his angel, Vayatzilo, he saved him. Itzave malochov lishmorcha. There's a shmira. Shmira doesn't only mean from physical harm. Shmira means even from what? From temptation. Shmira is even the spiritual sense. The angel will protect you. Yaakov, in terms of that, Yaakov was so intertwined with Hashem, didn't need that shmira. Didn't need, and he said, Ushmaticha, I will watch over you. You don't have to worry about the 3 cardinal sins. You don't have to worry anything, because if you're that closely attached to me, you're not going to be subject to all that, all these issues. So I was thinking also, we're dealing with Esav over here. With Esav, Yaakov has to deal with it on his own. Hashem doesn't fight his battle. You have to be worthy of what? Of the Shmirah. To be worthy of the Shmirah, that's where the Malach comes in. In terms of where you're at, you need no angel to protect you. When it comes to Esav, you have to create that setting to be worthy of the Shmirah. So to protect you in other areas, you don't need protection. And that had to do with Lavan, needed no protection. I mean, even Avram said, Eliezer said, what happens if the woman doesn't want to come back? Hashem yishlach ma'alocho. God will send his angel. You don't have to worry about it. God will send his angel. For that, Yaakov didn't need angels, even though yishlach Yaakov ma'alochim, but that wasn't protect, just to find that information. Is my brother still behaving like a brother or like an enemy? That's what that was about. What did he send them? What was the message? Im Lavan garti ve'chararato. I sojourned with Lavan, and I was delayed until now. Now, Rashi, based on one interpretation of Chazal, of the Medrash, Garti b'gmatri taryag. Garti, numerically, is taryag. Klome im lovan harosha garti, v'targ mitzvah shamarti. Therefore, I have nothing to worry about. That's what he was saying. I am unscathed, spiritually unscathed. I'm intact. I did not learn from his evil ways. We had once said that Yaakov says, I crossed the Jordan by my walking stick. That's all he had. What about the wealth? That if Eliezer Eved Avram had brought such wealth, so here the son of the patriarch, he shouldn't bring wealth with him? So Rashi cites the Midrash that Eliphaz was sent by his father to kill Yaakov, to pursue him, and he said to Eliphaz, you were raised now in your grandfather's home, and he taught you, Ani choshev kemes, that a person who's totally impoverished is like a person who's been killed, who's dead. take my wealth, and therefore you could leave me and you fulfill the dictate of your father. Okay? And that's what he did. Therefore, it's kibbeh makli. When he crossed the Jordan, he literally was penniless. That's what happened, because he gave it all up. So, we asked the question, he comes back to his father, Esav, he says, did you do the job? Did you kill him? So he says, no. How do you think his father would have reacted? Probably broke every bone in his body. But yet we find no. And if he did he should have pursued Yaakov to the home of Lavan. Why didn't he? That's the question we asked. But he didn't. Why didn't he? Because again, the bracha that he had received, that he had taken, was contingent. It was contingent that he has to remain at the level of Yaakov. If he keeps the Torah's entirety, then the bracha will be in place. Why? Because V'tilcho Elokim. It has to be Elokim, Vital Hashemayim. That if you meet the grade, you have the bracha. If you don't meet the grade, the bracha reverts back to Esav. So Esav says, nobody understood Lavan more than Esav understood Lavan. Esav was an exaggerated Lavan, and he understood it is humanly impossible to survive the environment of Padan Aram, especially if you're going to be in the home of Lavan, and that's going to be your father-in-law. And now that you have no wealth, you can't negotiate the hands of your wives and leave immediately. A pound of flesh is getting way cheap with Lavan. He will take your soul and your body, and he will take everything. At the end of the day, you'll be left totally stripped of any trace of spirituality. If that's the case, what do I have to bother myself? He'll go and totally deteriorate, disintegrate. There'll be no trace of his holiness left. Therefore, Esav did not pursue Yaakov. If that's the reason. Now, the Torah depicts Yaakov as Yaakov Ishtam Yoshev Holim. He was a man of the tent. He studied Torah. Before he fled to Lavan's house, he spent another 14 years in Yeshivas Shem Ve'ever. Another 14 years. Esav understood what Yaakov was doing, but that Esav had an appreciation, understanding of what Torah is. Had no inkling of the power of Torah. The whole concept of Barasi Yetzirah Barasi Torah Tavlin. I've created the evil inclination, which totally pursues a person every moment of his life till he goes to the grave. He had no understanding of the value of Torah versus that pursuit of the Yetzirah. Had no understanding. Therefore he says, so he'll study his Torah. He'll sway over his books. He'll be dedicated to that. But you know, if a person inhales infectious waste, you die. Versus his spirituality, there's nothing more lethal than the environment of Padan Aram. He will not survive it. But he didn't know that Torah itself has the ability to create an insular environment. Not only will Yaakov survive, he's going to father Shiftei Koh. His children will be angels, spiritual angels. And he'll be able to maintain and even advance himself. He will even be greater, that despite all the influences, he remains the same person, which is even greater, based on the principle of Fumtzara Agra. That despite the challenge, he met the grade. Esav didn't understand this. But how do you contend with all that? Even with the Torah? You know, a person, most people, even if we're observant, we're committed, we're still human beings. And a person is not permitted to put himself in the state to be tested. Why are you tested? Because we still have an inclination to whatever which is not appropriate and is not acceptable. So a person is saying, I'll be an observant Jew, but, you know, for curiosity's sake, I'd like to see what that is. But why even curious? The answer is because you do have a desire for that, except you're suppressing the desire. Every one of us. And therefore, once had said, we find that when Hashem took Klal Yisrael out of Egypt, it is Lo nochem elokim derech eretz plishtim ki korfu. He did not take them along the Philistine highway route because ki korfu, because it was close to Egypt. That's literally what it means. Because if they'll be confronted with war, if they're close, they'll return to Egypt. So Hashem took them the circuitous route that even they're not going to be able to go back so easily. So I once had explained maybe this way. The Jews were idolaters in Egypt. Of the Avodah Zorah, we were pagans. So Hashem took us straight into the desert, that we should not be exposed to idolatry. Because idolatry is still close to our hearts. So if we're exposed to what's close to our hearts, we recently idolaters, it can reactivate that interest, and we become idolaters again. So therefore Hashem took us out into the desert not to be exposed, because we still had some traces of the idolatry within us, and they could be reactivated. Hashem didn't want you to have a relapse of this. When a person opens a newspaper, right, the different sections. Certain sections, if a person at a certain level, maybe he doesn't even open the newspaper because he has no interest in whatever's in that paper. And even if he has an interest in, let's say, current events, there's certain sections, he immediately throws it straight into the trash. He has no interest. Another person says, yeah, but you never know. Among the pages, you may find some articles of value, of interest. But why? But don't you realize by turning those pages, your eye may catch something which you shouldn't be looking at? The answer is, but it won't. The answer is kikorafu. That since it's close to that person, people delude themselves. Everybody deludes at some level. Maybe. I'll see this and I won't look at that. But if it's korafu, and by looking at certain things of having interest, that's an indication that it has relevance to you. Yaakov, in terms of what Lavan represented, lo lamarti masav aroim. Do you know why I'm loving garti v'tar mitzvah shamati? Because lo lamarti masav aroim, I had no interest. Could you imagine? You have the waste treatment plant, and a person says, before they convert the waste and they treat, I'd like to see that waste. Who wasn't interested in what that waste looks like, or what it smells like, or what it represents? It's waste. It's an infectious waste. Who wants it? Who has an interest? This was Lavan in the eyes of Yaakov. Lo marti masav aroim. I didn't learn from his ways. I had no interest. And because I didn't have an interest, that's why it's Tarek Mitzvah Shamarti. Because the moment you have that interest and you allow yourself to be exposed, even to be curious, gradually, almost subconsciously, you're drawn there. Not even being aware to what degree you're drawn there. So the reason why it was Tarek Mitzvah Shamarti is because Lo marti masav aroim. Because I did not learn from his evil ways, because I had no interest in whatever he was. I have no interest. Somebody used to come to me, one time I visited a certain location, and the person says, I want to tell you something. I say, something? I wouldn't waste my brain power on what you have to tell me. It has so little value. My brain power is not worthwhile to waste on how inane and worthless the information you're telling me. So please don't share it with me. I'm not interested. You understand? Yaakov multiplied endless times in terms of what Lavan was, what he represented, his interests, his values, and therefore it's Tarek Mitzvah Shomarti, because Lo Lamarti Masav Roim, because he never got close enough, never had the interest. We find when Yaakov fled, after he had the dream, he made a commitment to Hashem, he made a neder, a vow, V'shafti El Beis Ovi B'Sholom. I will return in peace. V'shavti b'sholom el Beis Ovi, Oy Hashem li Elokim. I will return in peace to the household of my father, and Hashem will be my God. So Rashi says, what's b'sholom? Sholei minachet. I'll be whole, unscathed from sin. Shlo elmad midarke lovon. I will not learn from his ways. That was his original commitment. If that happens, whatever you give me, I will tithe. But that was his original. If Hashem fulfills that, lo elmad midarke lovon. And what was it? He says, lovon garti v'lo lamadti masavram. After this was speaking, going fast forwarding 20 years later. Lo lamadti masavram. I'm returning sholem. B'shavti beis avi b'sholom. I'm returning whole. We find at the beginning of Toldos, when the Torah goes and identifies the relationship between Yitzchok and Rivka Imenu, it says Yitzchok married at the age of 40, and he married Rivka bas Besuel, Mipad Narom, Achos Lovan Harami, the sister of Lovan. So Rashi cites the Midrash. Seemingly all this information is totally superfluous. Superfluous. We know from the whole story with the negotiation with Eliezer and Besuel and Lovan that her father was Besuel, her brother was Lovan, and there was Pad Narom. Why repeat this information? So the Medrash tells us Lahagid Shvocha Shel Rivka, to speak about the praiseworthiness of Rivka. What's the praiseworthiness? That Avia Rosha, her father was an evil man. Ochia Rosha, her brother was evil. B'nei Makoma Rishoim, the members of the community were evil. V'lo lomda mimasehim, she did not learn from their ways. Exact same words. She did not learn from their ways. She was raised in a spiritual cocoon, self-created. She had no interest, and because she had no interest, that's shvocha. You're in this compression chamber. Everything negative just coming in and crushing you. She did not learn from their ways. Identical is here. Shlomo Melech tells us in Mishlei, Zechat Tzarek Levrocha. We speak about Noach. Ele todos Noach. These are the children of Noach. Noach ish tzadik tomer yibadorosov. Why digress? We're coming to speak about the children of Noach, his three sons, Shem, Cham, and Yefes. All of a sudden, before we get there, we digress. Noach ish tzadik tomer yibadorosov. He was righteous, he was perfect in his generations. So Rashi cites the Midrash. Because Shlomo says when you speak about a tzaddik, the first thing you have to do is you have to quantify him livrocha. Do you know who Noach is? We start, these are his children. Oh, but by the way, do you know who he is? Zechat Tzadik Livrocha. Zechat Tzadik Livrocha. Tzadik, Tomim, the most special man who ever walked the face of the earth until that moment. Why? Shem Rishoim Yirkav. The name of the evil should rot. Decompose. There shouldn't be a trace of it. Because as human beings, as we are, what are we attracted to? That's something which is special, that we consider special. It may not be special. It may be detrimental to us. But if we're attracted to it, it's a problem. So if a person esteems something which is evil, it becomes a problem. So Hashem says, evil, Yirkav, it should rot. You don't speak about it. You let it totally decompose. There shouldn't be a trace of it. But Zechat Tzadik, when you mention Livrocha, you magnify him. You speak about all his qualities and why he's special. So people should gravitate and be attracted to him. That's what it's about. Because that's how you learn from his ways. We take notice. When you take notice and you see it's special, you learn from that person's ways. And that's Lolomda Maseyan. It's as if, even though they did exist, it's as if they didn't exist. She was able to turn a blind eye to the degree as if they didn't exist. Story with Reb Chanan Wasserman, Zeichat Tzarek Levrocha. He was in the United States right before World War II. And he He spent 2 years in the United States, and he was living on the West Side. And he had a driver, and the driver took a shortcut through Times Square. And Times Square then was a red light district. This is 38, 39. And he was a very holy man. He was the closest student of the Chofetz Chaim. And whenever he would, even when he sit in the car, he would not look out the window. He looked down. And as the person is driving, it was an observant person driving the car, drives through that area, the Rebbe Chanan says to the driver, he says, "Where you take me? It smells like you take me through a sewer. There's such a stench here. Where are you taking me?" He says, "I'm taking a shortcut through whatever it was." He says, "Take me out of here immediately." You understand? The driver, he didn't sense the stench. You know, person inhales enough pollution, ultimately, person gets lung cancer. Rebbe Chanan, so that's l'lomda maseim. If you smell it as sewage and worse, you don't want to be associated with it. That's Rebbe Chanan. The driver, he was totally oblivious. He had no idea. He didn't have that acuity to that sensitivity to whatever that was. Therefore, he could tolerate it. Rebbe Chanan couldn't tolerate it. Wants no association with it. There's a morale. Why did we go to Egypt? It was based on the Bris Bein Absorim, that Avram Avinu had a prophecy. A dread darkness came upon him. Ger zaracha be'eretz lo lehem. Your children will be strangers in the land which is not theirs, and they will be in bondage for 400 years. We were only in Egypt 210 years. So the Chazal tell us, it says, Ger zaracha, your children, your progeny. So we calculate the 400 years from the birth of Yitzchak. Yitzchak, from the birth of Yitzchak till he left Egypt, it's 400 years. So the question is, the Maral discusses, but how's that bondage? How's that bondage? We're in bondage. In Egypt, we're in bondage. We were in Canaan. Avram was a wealthy man. Yitzchak was a wealthy man. And they were holy people. What kind of bondage was it? So he explains, the Maral, in his work, V'urus Hashem, if a person is holy and refined and pure, and you put him into a den of perverted, corrupted environment which was totally impure, that's worse for them. That's worse than death. What was Canaan? Canaan was paganism, adultery, incense, human sacrifice. In terms of what Avram Avinu was, and what Yitzchak was, and what Yaakov was, this is worse than anything suffering in the physical sense. So how did they experience that? That was worse than bondage. That was, you will be enslaved, you will be in bondage, you'll have a level of suffering not to be compared to. That's the way they experience that experience. All of a sudden we go to Egypt. As long as Yaakov was alive, the bondage didn't begin. When he passed away, what happened was that whole generation passed away. What did the Jews say? We want to be like the Egyptians. We admire their culture. We want to be like them. And you know what they said? As the Egyptians are uncircumcised, we're going to stop circumcising ourselves. Hashem says, you see Gehenna like paradise. Those who loved you, they will hate you and they will enslave you. Until now, that is bondage. Because paganism, all that is worse than any human suffering. But now that human suffering, you admire, spiritual, you admire it, and you want to be that. But there has to be bondage. So now the spiritual bondage becomes physical bondage. Therefore, they're being enslaved. So again, Rivka Imenu, Lagid Shvacha, although she was born there, raised there. Her father was a Rosh, her brother was a Rosh, the members of her community were Rishoyim. L'olam d'masayim. Because how did she see all that? It was painful. We find that when Rivka sent Yaakov off to her brother to finally, she says to Yitzchak, Katzti b'chaya, I'm disgusted with my life. If Yaakov marries wives like Esav married, she never revealed to Yitzchak what Esav was, but his wives were bad women, pagans. They brought sacrifices to idolatry. She says, I can't tolerate it. I'm disgusted with my life if my son Yaakov should marry those kind of wives. That's all she shared. Disgusted. You know what it means? And one time, Jews, if they would see their children going off, chas v'sholem, especially even become Machali Shabbos or marrying out, God forbid, leaving the fold, people sat shiva. It's as if the child died. The level of pain was like losing a child. The whole understanding of what it meant to be a Jew, it was internalized to such a degree, a person would grieve over that. We live in a whole different world today. Who grieves over what? You know? Person gets a call, your son was arrested for drunken driving. Oh, thank God, I thought it was worse than that. Was caught with drugs. Could have been worse. They take it with a grain of salt. These are Jews. You don't understand. It's a whole different equation. What kind of evaluation is this? Thank God he didn't commit murder. Okay. I mean, that's when he crossed the line. Anything up to that, he hasn't yet crossed the line. What is the standard that we fall to? The answer is, of course, even the parents, they're so close to that edge. Even they admire whatever that is. Because the child was raised with those values within that environment. Well, I don't want to deny my child anything, because we live in a country. There's no anti-Semitism. We don't differentiate. We're not seen differently. Therefore, let my children have what they have. Okay. So that's why things look the way they look, and the state of affairs are what they are, because of that. He's concerned that he could be killed by Esav. Why? Because he says, "Katonti mikol hachasod mikol emes." I become diminished because of all the chesed and emes asher osise esavdecho. Why? What was the great chesed and emes? Ki b'makli avarti esayarden hazeh. Vato yis l'shtei machnos. I crossed the Jordan with nothing, my walking stick. Today, I have 2 camps. Tremendous wealth. Slaves, herds, flocks, wealth. So Rashi explains, I've become diminished because all the chesed and emes that you did with me. Therefore I'm afraid. Since you've promised me and you guaranteed me my safe return, I become soiled with sin. And that will cause me to be given over in the hands of Esav, in the clutches of Esav. What is one thing to another? Because my merits have been diminished, therefore I'm afraid, since you promised, I was soiled with sin. You're soiled with sin, it's a problem at any time. It's always a problem if you're soiled with sin. What do you mean? Because I've been diminished. Because all the chesed and emes, the chesed and emes that Hashem had provided for Yaakov. Let's talk. The protection that he wasn't influenced, as we said, by the environment. How do you remain fully intact? Tarek mitzvah shamarti. Lo mati mi masav. You know what kind of level of siyata d'shmaya one needs? And to raise a family that he raised there. The shift they call. Now, but why do you need that special merit? Because he chose to give up his wealth. If he wouldn't have given up his wealth for Eliphaz, what would have been? He would have negotiated for the hands of Rachel and Leah, left. So why did he need all this additional siyata dishmaya? Because he made a decision not to kill Eliphaz, give up his wealth. Now he's stuck there for 20 years. What about your mother said to you? You should go to Yom HaChodim. You should go for a short stay. He had to violate the wishes of his mother, and he never saw his mother again because she passed away before he returned, because he made a calculation. It's better to give up the wealth and not kill Eliphaz. So why did Hashem have to restore all his wealth? Because you gave up your wealth. So maybe because I've been diminished because of all the chesed and emes that you did with me. The chesed is you've given me tremendous wealth. The emes, that I was able to retain my spirituality. But why did I need all that? Why did you have to provide that? Because I made a decision. But that was my decision. That wasn't God's decision. This didn't have to happen. Therefore, Shem Slachlachti Bechet. Maybe I've sold with sin. I violated the Yom HaChodim. So maybe all that, I created this whole scenario. This is not Hashem presented me with the scenario. I've created my own scenario. Therefore, there's culpability here. Maybe there's a degree of liability. And because of that liability, I'm compromised. And if I'm compromised, I'm vulnerable to attack. And maybe Esav could kill me for that reason and destroy me. And that's what he says, Kibe Makli Avarti. I only crossed with my makeh, with my walking stick. But why? Because you chose to give it up. You didn't have to cross where you walk. You could have crossed with tremendous wealth. I crossed with, and today I have 2 camps. Those camps are only a result of God's chesed. He restored it. But that was your decision. That wasn't God's decision. That's your decision. The Rechaim we had mentioned last week or 2 weeks ago, it says, Hashem Omid Olav, Yudke Vavke. Initially, God says, I will deal with you within the context of Midas HaRachmim. But yet when Yaakov had made the commitment to God, he says, Emiya Elokimi Modi, Midas Adin. I don't want the evaluation to be Midas HaRachmim, I want the evaluation of Midas Adin. Exact evaluation. So, God promised to be watch over him. And he's worthy for that protection. That's within the context of Midas HaRachmim. But Yaakov upped the ante. Elokim, I want the evaluation of Elokim. So now he says, I'm concerned. Since I accepted part of myself, Elokim, what's going to be if I didn't meet the grade? Now it's Shem Yigur Machet. Until now, I didn't have to worry. As the Rechaim says, what Midas HaRachmim will tolerate, will be agreeable to, Midas Adin, the attribute of justice, will prevent, will not allow it to happen. So within Midas HaRachmim, I deserve protection, everything would be fine. But because I asked to be an evaluation which is more exacting, maybe I'm not going to survive it. Despite that, he prayed, he did whatever he can, and he succeeded. But how did he succeed? Of course, everything siyata d'shmaya. He did 3 things. It says that when he saw Esav coming, he ran towards him and he bowed 7 times. And then he embraced his brother and they cried. Esav cried. Why did he cry? That since he saw his brother humbling himself to such a degree to him, he touched him. Even Esav, this hard, cold, murderous person, evil, even he was touched by Yaakov, by everything he had done. The gift, the tefillah, and the actual, what he initiated. He was touched. Is that a miracle? You'd say no. It says Nichmu Rachmov. His Rachmim were, he was warmed to Yaakov. So over there, says v'yechabkeu, he embraced him. Nizgaglu rachmav k'shero mishtachve kol shtachvos halolu. His mercy was aroused when he saw him prostrating himself these multiple times. Omer Reb Shimi Choy halochi biyodua she'esav sodi liYakov. It's known halocha. El shenichmu rachmav b'osashov v'noshka b'cholibo. But he was touched, his mercy, he was touched something, and he kissed him with all his heart. So over here, the Balaturim cites a pasuk, a verse in Mishlei. Vayishtachu arza. The Torah makes it a point. 7 times he bowed. What does the Torah make that point? Could have said he bowed. Doesn't make a difference how many times he bowed. But it says, the Torah says he bowed 7 times. Al Shem, a pasuk in Mishlei, in Proverbs, Ki sheva yipol tzadik v'kom. Hashem says the tzaddik falls only 7 times. But after he falls 7 times, he rises. So therefore, as a result of that, Yaakov understood that. You know what it means? My child has to stoop before this evil man 7 times. I've had it. Hashem says, I've had my full. He will rise now. So Yaakov understood that Hashem chose not to tolerate more than that. Sheva yibol tzadik, but after 7 Sheva, 4. Therefore, the Torah makes it a point. Vayishtachu Yaakov Sheva pomim, 7 times. And then he rose, and then he touched him. So why was he able to touch him? Because Hashem says, I've had enough. So with all the initiative, why did it work? That was a siyata dishmaya. Because Hashem says, I can't handle it more than that. My tzaddik, my beloved child, should go shine the shoes of that subhuman being. No way, I've had enough. Once mentioned in Chazon Ish that Rabbi Zalman Meltzer, who lived in Yerushalayim for the last maybe 30 years of his life, who was the father of Rav Aaron Kotler Zev Tzaddik Livrocha, he was known as the elderly tzaddik and Rosh Yeshiva of the generation. And the Arabs, he lived in the Meisharim area, in that area, in Yerushalayim, and a bomb went off and he was wounded with shrapnel, and he had a leg wound. So right away they went to the Chazon Ish. They said, how could this happen? A man who's as pure, as righteous, and special as Rabbi Zalman Meltzer, he should be wounded with shrapnel. It was a leg wound, nothing very serious. So he says that shrapnel wound saved 100,000 Jews. Why? Because what's midas adin? What is the attribute of justice? Sudden bangs on Hashem's door. Nobody's record is perfect. And our record's far from perfect. But an imperfect record doesn't in any way undermine the midas harachmim. And we survive because of Hashem's rachmim, Hashem's mercy. And the Satan, who's the prosecutor of the Jewish people, bangs on God's door. He says, I want to audit the record. Hashem says, I don't want to hear from you. I don't want to hear from you. You want to talk about my children, prosecute my children? I don't want to hear from you. But sometimes the record becomes so weighted down onto the negative, Hashem can't push him away. Can't push him away. And only after Hashem has had enough, he says, enough. I don't want to hear about it any longer. And he takes Satan, throws him out on his head. So what happens? Hashem has a person who he loves more than anything in the world, like a tzaddik, like Rabbi Zalman Meltzer. And he has him incur a metal wound in his leg. Satan says to Hashem, but it's not enough. This is not enough. My beloved tzaddik has this wound. That's not enough for you. I don't want to hear from you. That's what the Chazon Ish meant. That was 100,000 casualties. Because Hashem says, I've had enough. My tzaddik should bow before this evil man 7 times. He should disgrace himself. Will not accept more. I will not tolerate more than that. Therefore, it's become. I will not let evil in any way dominate this tzaddik. And Yaakov understood that. Therefore, v'kom, v'inashkeu, v'chapkeu, he hugged him and he cried, b'chol libo. Even though it's Esav Sonei LeYaakov, Noshka b'chol libo, he kissed him with all his heart, with total sincerity.